he convinced me to go to a swingers club. And that was not a good experience. I think it'll traumatize me for years to come.
No one in this fucking world has your back but me!
What are you talking about?
Nobody in this fucking world has you back but me! I'm the only one! Your parents didn't give a fuck about you!
Why are you abusing me?
Because it's true!
It's not.
Yeah, it is!
I had good parents.
Fuck you!
I did.
You didn't have shit! They don't give a fuck if you have a roof over your head! Just shut up!
Gotham Investigations, and I'm Jeff Giordano, your private investigator. Scorned women. As the saying goes, their hell has no fury like a woman scorned. Midnight Bridge by an English playwright. And wow, has that ever taken a storm. Scorned women come in every shape and size. Fat, skinny, blondes, brunettes, and in this case, not too shabby.
Oh, thank you,
Eleni
Jeffrey.
Demos, a scorned woman that we have conducted some work for her. First of all, I want to salute you with a nice toast. I finally get to meet you. Most of our clients hire us on the phone, and it takes a little time for us to hook up. Now with Zelle and all the information, sometimes you never even meet the client. But this woman wants to get her story out to help others.
I do. I think that's the only real
I
satisfaction.
want to present you with a book, not to scare the shit out of you, but I wrote a book, The Mitigation of Mark Sievers, and prominent case in Bonita Springs, where a husband hired his best friend to kill his wife and bludgeoned her with a hammer like 17 times. So you got out of your relationship before that happened. So I want to hear your story. This is the book. I'll present it to you afterwards.
Thank you.
And stuff. We'll put it over here.
Can I see it?
Oh, absolutely. I'll show it to you afterwards.
All right.
You'll have plenty of time to read it on your trip and journey. So, Elaine, how did you meet your husband?
Jeffrey, it's a long story. I actually knew my husband from a young child, from church and from familial connections.
And what is your occupation?
Well, I actually went to law school. Undergrad, I went to Penn State and finished a bachelor's of science in electrical engineering. Went into a family business for a few years with my father. And then I went back to law school in the evening and became a patent lawyer. And when I escaped the horrible abusive situation I was in, I brought my 2 children to Florida and went back and got my master's in business administration at the University of Miami and am now doing finance.
Now, are you legally divorced yet, or you're still approaching that?
No, we were legally divorced in 2020.
But you have 2 kids in common, and this is where the complication comes in, that he doesn't want to accept any responsibility towards supporting you.
No, I actually have 100% custody of my 2 children, and my lawyer in New York actually had told me to escape to Florida. He, not many lawyers don't take your business, but he thought that my ex was very scary and mentally ill and wanted me to get my children and I to safety and move to Florida.
So how long into your relationship was it till you realized that things are just not going well?
So in 2012, I've done a lot of work with myself, but I realized earlier in the relationship that there were abusive components. When I was pregnant with my son in 2007, he actually locked me in a closet, and I was too timid and afraid at that point to call the police. But one of the neighbors heard me crying and screaming and called the police on us. He was very abusive at that point, and I later found out that he was pretty much abusive the entire time and, and horrible. But in 2007, when I was pregnant with my son, I gave birth to my son in January of 2007, so I guess it was 2006. He told me that he wouldn't have sex with me because it was like having sex with a fat woman, and he wasn't interested in having sex with me or being intimate with me. He gave me no love during my pregnancy. I have no pictures of myself pregnant.
This was your second or first one?
My first.
Your first.
And I loved being pregnant. I felt every movement in my stomach. I played all the Bach and Beethoven to get the baby to move. I felt like a beautiful being. I gained like 20 pounds. I'm a little person, and I was running and taking care of myself. Fitness is very important in any abusive relationship. Self-love and care have been my strength at the higher points of my life. That's key for anybody in an abusive relationship, to stay strong and healthy, because you're being faced with a lot of unhealthy things thrown at you.
So he started locking you in the closet. Were you pregnant during this time?
So we lived in Jacksonville, Florida. I had moved there. I had no family there. And he locked me in a closet, and the police came. There is a report. I will tell you that I do have severe PTSD, which I'm treating now with EMDR, but a lot of these traumatic events do affect you long term. And being that I'm such an academic and I was a stronger woman, and I'm building that back, the memory issue has really frustrated me quite a bit, and frustrated the people around me as well. I think it's a horrible place to be in. So yes, I was pregnant with my son, I believe, at that point. So I didn't feel like I could leave, even though I knew it wasn't right. And I didn't know the extent of the situation, which I later discovered, but it was horrible. It was a horrible
What
feeling.
did he lock you in the closet for?
We had been fighting, and I just remember that he had called his brother. Our families were very intertwined. And he said he didn't want to be married to me, and he would leave me if I wasn't pregnant. And I was disgusting. He told me that a lot. And I just remember crying and screaming, and then one of the neighbors actually calling the police, and the police coming, and me lying for him, as I always did, and saying it was just a fight. We just had a normal family fight, and, sending the police on their way.
So this was a isolated incident then? It wasn't like a daily locking in the closet?
No, that was an extreme. And then what it was, I'm sure you're familiar with trauma bonding,
Yes.
but it was a abusive where you feel like poo. And then, the next day he makes you feel like a queen and builds you up and apologizes. And you for some reason tend to forget, even though it still affects your brain and your psyche to every level for years to come. You, for some reason, place it somewhere back in your memory and forget it and try to stay together for whatever reason.
So a lot of women that faced trauma, when they get such a trauma like that, and like you says, the next day he makes you feel good and better, it's kind of like messes you with your pleasure senses in your brain. And sometimes you kind of want to achieve that high, so you're looking to get punished again because you want to get the reward of being unpunished.
Actually,
that becomes a mental.
I worked with somebody who's a sex addiction specialist, a world-renowned sex addiction specialist, who is out of a center outside of New Orleans, and she thoroughly explained the cycle. I mean, my ex had lapses where he wanted to try to be healthier, but he had a lot of layers of issues. So we tried this trauma that I believe even Tiger Woods had gone to, and Ellen, for sex addiction. And she explained it to me, and she said that these trauma bonds are similar to a heroin addiction. So the high that you feel after being so low and exploited and degraded is almost like that high that a heroin addict, I've never done heroin, but apparently the high you feel afterwards is similar to heroin addiction because you're feeling worthwhile, you're feeling worthy again and meaningful, like a meaningful being. So you feel so low during the abusive period, and then when your partner or lover or whoever he might be comes back and treats you like a human again, you get high off of feeling like a human. It's quite a sick and convoluted thing. And I am not proud that I went through it for so long. I can't explain it. And I think that the one single factor that kept me depressed or struggling post-divorce when I finally got out and started to feel like me again, it takes time. I still don't feel like me sometimes. But the one factor that kept me in bed and depressed was, why did you stay, Eleni? Why? You're a strong woman. You're a professional. You I had a perfect childhood. Nothing's perfect, but I had a loving, normal childhood with 2 amazing parents. My father never looked at another woman. My mother and father were married for 60-some years before my father passed away. I was a normal person, and I could have married a normal man.
So you're talking about sex addiction, but you he said that you were fat, you were ugly, he didn't want to have sex with you. So where does the sex addiction come into play in your marriage?
So do you want to know about the discovery point? I mean, my discovery is really relevant for my healing.
Obviously, you started having sex again. You had your second child. So where does the sex addiction come in? Was he addicted to having sex with you again? Or where does that come into play?
So one of the therapists or psychiatrists along the way said...
Forget about the therapist. I want to talk about you. Where does the...
But you can't think like a man like this. And I would try to understand what was going through his brain. And they would say, you are not crazy. You weren't
Right.
abused as a child. You can't think like him.
Forget
So
about the confusion.
when did I start having sex with him again?
But where does the addiction part come in? Were you addicted to him?
I became,
Was he addicted to you?
I think we became addicted to one another at certain points. And, it was a very, very odd situation because normally when somebody is cheating, they don't come home, or they don't. My ex was in his bed every night. He was doing all this stuff during the day behind my back. And I had no clues. So people will say to me sometimes,
He was addicted to sex outside of you.
100% to hookers, porn stars. What actually exploded in his world at the end was that I had caught him with hookers. And he then, our therapist at the time said he had to be accountable to me. And they actually said that he should be accountable to everybody because he was not well.
Now, was there ever a point where he forced you to be with other men?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and how that came about. I know it hurts to talk about these things, but if we're going to help other people out there, now's the time to get it out.
I think that when he would come back, I would do anything to make him happy. And so I did some things that I'm not proud of to make him happy.
Well, this is going to help other people out there. This is going to help other kids, other teenagers. How did this come about? What did he tell you? And how did he came back? And now where does this come from?
So to be honest, we were both very sexual beings, but I am a healthy sexual being. And I had no issues with him until I found out that he was sleeping with the strippers and everything. I allowed him to do whatever he wants. I was not my friends were like, you're crazy.
So he comes back.
So he comes back and, I want to explain. We used to go to strip clubs together. So I was okay with that if we were together as long as it was within our marriage, right? You don't cheat on anybody, but if you can make your life interesting, when you're married for 20 years, or at that point, I don't even know how long we were married, you tried to make your life interesting. But then after he convinced me to go to a swingers club, and that was not a good experience. I think it'll traumatize me for years to come.
And that's important that you get this out. So what happened at the swingers club?
So we had an agreement, and I had done my research before we went there. And I said, I did not want to do anything sexual with anybody else. I said, we can go to this place. You could get, this is so gross and embarrassing.
That's why it's important to get it out there, because we're going to save lives with this. We're going to save relationships. We're going to help,
And this is like the worst. You had to really get in there.
We want to bring women so they can walk
You had to
away.
get in there hardcore. This is probably the most disgusting and disturbing thing
This is the
that
time
I
you can
did.
get it out. You could vent. What happened there?
So we had gone to a swingers club together, and the agreement was that we would go there and, dance and be in that situation. I didn't know because I'd never been to one. So we got there. It seemed pretty normal. You walked in. It's like a cheesy place with music and a dance floor, and then people everywhere. And I obviously got attacked because I don't look like the typical person that walks into a swingers club. And my ex, I think, made a joke like, "Oh, you're lucky. You could pick whoever you want. Like, you could pick what couple you want to hang out with or whatever." But the agreement was that we would not go back into the back room or do anything that was, beyond our rules. I know a lot of people that, I actually don't know them, but I think that some people that are married enter that lifestyle and can do it if there's rules, and they could keep it contained and to intimacy within themselves. So I said, I absolutely want no intimacy with anybody else, and I will go there with you, but I want to come home with my husband and be with my husband alone. And so then we get to the swingers club, and, I got attacked pretty much like by every man and woman that wanted to be with us, or
He allowed it.
he loves it. He's a narcissist. I mean, he fed off of it was for once, because my daughter actually said, whenever we got divorced, "Mama, Daddy was always jealous of you because you always had so many more friends and got so much more attention than him." Because he didn't like to connect with people, because I think he has such a deep-rooted, troubled story that he couldn't tell from his childhood.
So when you say attack, did they hit you? Did they, what?
No, they just would come over and talk to us and make it known that, that they thought I was attractive, and that if we wanted to go into the back room with them, that we could.
But that takes a little willingness too on your part. So how did you give in to your husband's insanity?
He told me that if we went back to the back room, that we wouldn't have sex with anybody else. That we would go into the back room just to watch. Because there are people that walk through and watch people have sex with other people. And it's disgusting, and probably the most horrible point of my life. And I have no clue who I was at that point. I definitely am not the woman I am today, because now I'm a goddess, and my book is going to teach women how to rise above
and
become a goddess again. Get your power back and be a woman.
Yes.
And demand respect and love.
And that's
know
what
who you are.
Are all about, to expose these situations. So you went back there to watch. Did you ever engage? And that's where
So the rule was that we wouldn't engage with anybody else, and that we would just leave and engage with each other after we went back there. And once we went back there, his sex addiction came out and was like actually scary because I saw it. I mean, I actually was aware of his sex addiction at this point. We had gone into treatments all over the country. I had caught him when I was 6 months pregnant. My first discovery was...
okay, let's stick to the narrative here for time.
Well, I was aware of his sex addiction, but I actually saw it. That
So it came to life in that room. So what happened in that room?
So then, basically, as always, my ex didn't follow the rules. And I felt somewhat obliged to follow what he was doing.
And what was he doing?
I'd rather not to go into
Well, this is to help other...
Yeah, but it's also like very gross and not my proudest moment of who I am as a woman. But
that's why we're expressing it to
I
other
think
peoples.
that it's probably...
Was he masturbating? Was he with another man?
No, he was with another woman.
Okay.
This couple had come, and we agreed to spend time with this couple. And he was fooling around with the wife, and I was fooling around with the husband. And then I looked over at him and I said, I want to leave. I don't like this. I don't feel right. I feel sick. And I couldn't even talk to him. He was in such a zone of disgustingness and everything against everything I ever believed in. And he was having sex with the wife. And, I was next to him fooling around with the husband. And I ended up, freaking out because he wouldn't stop doing what he was doing, and left the room. And, we obviously never went back because it was disgusting. And I feel like once you're in the room and...
So you had sex with the other man, and that's where the trauma set in.
Yeah.
And you never went back to a swingers club since.
I have no desire. I think that a union... I'm not ready for a relationship yet. I date, and I'm trying to build myself and love myself again. And part of my book is about that.
And did he ever try to bring you back to a swingers club after that?
No. He tried other things like...
bringing people to the house?
Yes. He tried to... we had gone to a strippers club. Now, I am fuzzy on... I think the stripper was before this.
Now, he made you have sex with another woman before?
No, we didn't have sex.
But I mean, with
He
another
watched another woman and I doing things.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. No, sex with another woman.
But I never had sex with another woman. I, entertained him.
He
Actually,
forced you.
that was earlier in time.
Gotcha. Oh.
He actually he forced me to do that in New York in 2017 with another couple, and the woman was a friend of mine. And I don't want to incriminate anybody, but the couple, the husband and him were thought we were both attractive women, and he basically I shouldn't say that about myself, but you know what I'm saying. We weren't the average Joe. We worked out 7 days a week. We were both she was blonde, blue-eyed. I was.
So you had basically oral sex.
We kissed, and I think at that point we just touched each other. It was a building up of my comfort level because I met him at 21, and I was.
Well, it's important because for you women out there to see how these things escalate and progress
Yes.
into a situation where you feel trapped in pleasing your partner And then afterwards, the emotions that you go through, you can't get back.
So the first experience is, you put it beautifully. The first experience with this was with a friend of mine that he had wanted to watch us. We had worked out together every day. We were mom friends.
And she was all in.
She and I had a connection of like working out. We did hot yoga together every day. And we lived at in the Hamptons at the time, and we worked out. We really took care of ourselves. So she was into pleasing her husband as well.
Oh, so her husband came there with...
So her husband and my husband would watch. But that was very like, I almost don't even want to bring it up. You just brought up progression.
Right.
It was innocent, and it was like kissing and touching versus what he made me do later.
So
it was definitely a progression.
You were both naked in the bed.
No. The first initial time was just exploration and two beautiful women trying to please their narcissistic, gross husbands.
And the narcissistic husbands obviously were masturbating while they're watching this.
They were just watching, and then we went to our rooms and we're alone. It wasn't, that's why I didn't mention it at first, because it wasn't as gross as what it progressed into.
What did it progress into?
I mean, then the second thing was when we had gone to a strip club together, and he brought, they would attack me at the strip clubs as well. The women like women, if you've been to a strip club. They like attractive women. So he said, do you like her? Do you like her? And next thing I know, I'm like, she's all right. I would just do everything to make him happy. Like, I'm a Greek woman, and Greek women, like my mother, except they were wonderfully religious, beautiful, conservative beings, made the man happy. So he met me at church. He knew of my family background, which was amazing and wonderful. And I knew of his, which I did see some red flags with his family, which I should have known. It should have been a red flag. Women, you need to follow your gut, because your gut tells you everything in life, and you need to use it as guidance and direction.
So when did you finally have the strength to walk out of this relationship?
There were a couple incidents.
The final straw.
So when we were living in New York, he had been accused of. So when I caught him with, I want to kind of give a story. An addict that doesn't want to heal just changes his modus operandi, as a legal term. So they figure out how to get the fix and pull the blinds over your eyes to get it. So he started to do things through the office. And in 2018, there was some woman that came forward from the office that accused him of some inappropriate sexual behavior, and it exploded.
And did you ever see things on his computer?
I had caught him in 2012. I had caught him sleeping with a hooker with AIDS, and I was 6 months pregnant, and
How do you know she had AIDS?
I don't know if I guess I can give identities. So I went to the phone bill.
Identities.
Well, she was in the National Enquirer.
Okay.
So I think it's pretty public knowledge that would happen. So I would go to the phone bill and do this discovery, which is very common for women who have PTSD and trauma. And I would go through the phone bill and actually call some of the women, because you're so lost when you feel like your life is you're delusional and your life is so different. Your mindset is so different than your reality. I thought my life was perfect. And then I realized that he was sleeping with hookers. There were just hookers all over my phone bill in 2012.
Well, I don't really want to be with somebody who fucks
Shut the fuck up!
hookers.
I don't want to be with someone cheat on me either, but I love you, so stop it!
I don't want to be with you.
Shut up.
Black hookers and Port
I
Jeff.
wasn't with a fucking black hookers.
Yeah, you were. in Danford's on your lunch break.
I never went to Danford's. I told you that.
You fucking sick fuck.
I never went to Danford's.
What?
Shut up! It's done!
How do you go with fucking hookers?
I just did. Okay? I just did it. Doesn't
How?
matter. I made a mistake. Just like how does fucking Bill Clinton get
Normal
a blowjob?
people don't fuck hookers. Normal people don't go on their lunch break and fuck hookers.
I wasn't fucking them, number one. Dude,
Yes,
even
you
Joe
did.
tried to tell you that this is enough.
You did fuck them.
One.
So you need to
Only
focus.
one. I don't need to focus anymore. It's done. That's past.
Hookers! Who fucks hookers?
Shut up.
No.
It's done.
I won't shut up.
You will shut up.
No.
I have more strength than you. I can go.
So I had spoken with this woman named Allison Carey. And I saw her picture. I would Google them. I was sick. And my therapist, I have a great sex addiction therapist that we started together and I stuck with her. I still have her today.
And why are you seeing a sex addiction therapist? Did you start getting addicted to this?
I
lifestyle?
thought, so there's two reasons. I don't necessarily need a sex addiction therapist at this point in my life, but I felt like she's so familiar with what I've experienced. And it's very hard to start all over and talk about it, because once you start talking about it, you feel the pain again and you re-traumatize yourself.
Gotcha.
So I didn't want to start over. At this point, I think I could use a life coach versus a sex addiction therapist. But I also kind of like that she knows my story and they're familiar with how your body reacts to the trauma more. I've tried other people, other therapists, especially during COVID when everybody was like on lockdown, and they didn't get the severity of sex addiction or the trauma that it caused.
So how did he take it when you finally said, I want a divorce?
So I want to tell you about the Mariah Carey story. So
Okay.
I was in the grocery store at Stop and Shop in Long Island with my two children, and I looked at the National Enquirer, and on the cover of the National Enquirer, it said, mind you, I was like 6 months pregnant with our third child. It said, Mariah Carey's sister has AIDS, and she's, a hooker in Riverhead. Mariah Carey, it was more about how Mariah Carey abandoned her because she was an addict. And that was the woman that my ex had been with. And it was all over my phone bill. And so I literally had a nervous breakdown. I was crying. Let me just say, I was out of control. I called my sister, I remember, and crying and just said, like, I'm pregnant. I think I have AIDS. Like, I don't know what to do. This is insane. And I didn't have AIDS, thank God. But once he had discovered that I went back to him. He said, oh, I never had sex with her. He said, I just went for a blowjob on my lunch break. I mean, would you want a dentist in your child's mouth that went on his lunch break to do these types of things? Like, it's almost disturbing and disgusting, but he convinced me that he did not have sex with her. I was so delusional and out of sorts with reality. Like, I believed him. I wanted to believe because I had two children with him at that point.
So he just told you I had a little blowjob on my lunch break.
And why I accepted that, at this point in time, I have no clue. But at that point, I had accepted it as non-attachment, non-emotional, disturbing events because he had a troubled childhood and had been molested.
I'm lucky if I get a peanut butter jelly sandwich at lunchtime. So you finally get enough nerve to say, I want a divorce.
And so, okay, I think one of the breaking factors, that was the first factor. When things broke out in New York, there were a lot of people that I knew that were intimately connected to our life that came forward. And I knew they weren't lying. Like, the one actually said to me, I know you're not going to believe me, but I will connect you with 3 other people that will tell you the truth. She wanted to save me. And she said, if I can do anything, she had been accusing him of rape. And I attacked her and said, why would you do this? You babysat my kids. You were part of my life. Like, you picked my kids up from school. So her and I became friends, actually. She learned to know me as a person because the way he got away with this was he told everybody in New York that I was a drug addict and that I was crazy and that I had a boyfriend and that we had an open relationship. And we didn't. I said to him one day, I wish I had known.
So he was using that as justification.
At the office.
So you finally tell him, I want a divorce.
So I leave and come to Florida. Then he follows. And he comes to Florida and he says, Eleni, I love you with all my heart. The notes and the messages and the emails and the texts. I will do anything you want to save our family. And I think, I don't know. I'd like to think that he had some intention to get help, but a lot of people think that he was just trying to toll the statute of limitations so that I couldn't bring that stuff out in any type of lawsuit. Because a lot of it, I have lawyers involved in my life out the ass right now. Sorry.
And now he's trying to claim bankruptcy, and he has money, obviously.
But the breaking factor was in 2019 when my daughter... It was my daughter's birthday, and I always let my kids stay home for their birthdays. And we were going to go for a manicure and a pedicure at a local salon.
Little Manny and Petty.
Every birthday, I keep them home from school. My parents did the same thing for me. And my ex, who had been living at our other house in Delray Beach, shows up asking for money. And I said, I don't have money to give you. I had been maintaining everything, like out of my inheritance, out of my life savings, because out of New York, he ended up in rehab and not working and in a bad financial situation. Like, we were bad. We went from being on the top to him being fired and accused of rape and sexual assault.
The final straw.
So my daughter's birthday, he basically threw me to the bed and choked me. And as he threw me to the bed and choked me, you'll like this story. You won't like the what happened, but you'll like how it evolved. So he threw me to the bed and choked me and said, am I allowed to swear?
You can swear. You can stomp, do whatever you need to do. He
literally was 200 pounds. I'm like 107. Went on me and was on top of me and choked me and said, looked me in the eyes and said, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I, as an abused woman for 20 years, never let go of my phone. So I had my phone like this. He always tried to get it at the end, and I would always threaten to call the police. And so I dialed 911. Like, I knew how to dial 911 without looking. Like, it was scary. It was crazy. I dialed 911 and I showed him the phone and I said, I'm going to call the police if you don't get off of me and get out of my house. So he jumped off me. I hang up on the police, but the police still came. And anytime they hear a disturbance on a 911 call, they still come. And when the police came, of course, I tried to lie for him. I didn't want to. He had me convinced that this would ruin him and ruin my kids if I ever disclosed the abusive behavior and things that were happening to me. So when the police came, I lied. And I said, officer, I said, this was just a dispute. He came over here asking for money. As long as he leaves, that was always my condition. I said, I just want to, let this go. So that time, the deputy pulled me aside. He was an amazing guy. And he looks at me and he says, Eleni. He goes, my Greek name's Eleni. My American name's Elaine. That's my goddess name. And who I am and who I was as a kid and who I will be moving forward, because you have to really find who you were and go back to those roots. So he said, Eleni, he goes, you are lying for him.
Going back to basics, that's so important.
It is. I don't know if that's...
So your daughter had a
So
comment.
my daughter had seen what happened, and on the 911 call, the deputy had informed me that they heard her saying, "Please don't kill my mama." And so the deputy gave me a long lecture and said, "I will go to court with you."
Time to go. Time to break.
But he went to court with me to get a restraining order. And he actually was a wonderful guy. He went to court with me. He helped me get the courage to do it, which I later dropped. He threatened me and I dropped it.
So you finally go through with this. You get a divorce. Agreements are made, but now your husband backs out of the agreements, obviously.
So, ironically, my ex signed 2 postnups. The first incident being the hooker incident when I was pregnant. He didn't want me to leave. I was ready to leave at that point, and
So what does that have to do with a preempt?
so our therapist, I think she was a sex addiction therapist at the time in Long Island, New York. She said to my ex, she said, Eleni is all about trust and love, and she's devastated, and you are all about your money. And she recommended that we go to a lawyer and drop. This was the stupidest thing. It's just another mechanism for them to manipulate you. But she recommended that we go to a lawyer and that he get a lawyer to write a postnup agreement stating that if he hurt me or abused me again, mind you, we're going back and forth. This was in 2012.
A preempt, nothing to do with money.
I will explain.
Okay.
So 2012.
Explain it in 2 sentences for time purposes.
So in 2013, I think was when he found the lawyer, and the lawyer drafted the agreement that if he abused me again or did these things, then I would, quote unquote, have a list of things that were granted to me.
So let's go to the second preempt agreement. Basically, explain that in 2 sentences, if that's at all possible.
The second prenup was after multiple parties, men and women, came forward and made accusations of sexual improprieties. And once again, he offered the earth, moon, and stars to keep our family together. Because I was all about family and keeping us together. And my kids are my life.
So the signature, to stamp on that, what was in 2 lines?
So he promised to go to rehab, which he did. He went to a serious rehab. He promised to go to a psychiatrist and get on medication for his mental, he'd been diagnosed as bipolar and borderline personality disorder, antisocial, which I think was a result of his childhood molestation. He became 2 different beings, the sexual being that was trying to get revenge on his father who had touched him inappropriately, and the good person during the day who he was trying to be. And I was in love with the good person, but I couldn't deal with the bad person anymore. It was too much of a liability for me and my kids and my life. So the second postnup, we went back to that original lawyer, and he said basically the same agreement, just variations on our life at that point. And then actually went a little further with his quote unquote treatment. I think the treatment was just a way.
So that was not like a preempt, that was more like a signed agreement, I'm going to get help.
I'm sorry, it was a postnup.
A postnup, there you go.
A postnup is post-marriage. As a lawyer myself,
So you realize, Elaine, I worked with police department for 30 years. I worked with the gang detail. We worked ropes courses, and you have to learn to conquer your fear. You realize you're going to have to go back to that swingers club, whether it's with your therapist or someone else, not to do anything, but you're going to have to look at that.
I don't want to ever go back there.
location.
But I will
you
deal
have to
with.
face your fears.
I have faced a lot of my fears through therapy and the right people, like world-renowned people that will help me through
Doesn't
it.
mean you have to
and
do
also
anything, but you have to
self-discovery,
face your
Jeffrey.
fears.
Like, there's not a lot of resources out there for women who really want to escape. So when I wanted to escape, which was multiple times throughout the marriage, he would threaten to kill me.
So tell us about your book. You wrote a book,
Yes.
and that's what we're here for, to educate the women out there and men, because there's a lot of scorned men out there too, whether you believe it or not,
definitely-
Eleni.
No, I
It's
agree.
it's a 50-50 out there.
I
It's
agree.
a 50-50. Tell us about your book. Do you
I
have
am
a title
not
for it yet?
discriminatory.
But what is your book about?
So my book is going to be based on the rules of a goddess. And I believe that every woman or man, I might have to change it. No, but it's really about me and my rules. And I think that, as a woman, you have a gut. And I want to teach women not only to follow that gut feeling and not be manipulated by devils and demons, but to follow that gut and go back to the Bible or whatever your spirituality is and understand that your path forward shouldn't be manipulated by the person you chose to be with, the demon and the devil in my case. But I was manipulated. I was my divorce was based on cruel and inhumane treatment. I have a lot of stories. My story has defined.
And all these stories are going to be in the book? And is
So-
this Rules of the Goddess? Is that going to be the name of the
It's
book?
going to be rules of a goddess rules that help you follow a path, a healthy path, and help you understand who you are to get out. If I can help any woman out there get out of an abusive relationship and not stay for 20 years. I was 21 when I married this person. I had a little bit of narcissistic abuse in my childhood. My father was a narcissist, but he was a good narcissist.
A good narcissist. There's good and I never heard of a good narcissist.
Well,
but
there is
your
good
book is going to make a change in people's lives.
I want to make
you
a
have-
change and
When,
help.
when is this going to be completed?
I'm working on it diligently. I have a publisher, and I also have an
And you're in a
editor.
TV show, upcoming TV show is what? Can you just
Yes.
give us a little
So-
brief two-liner on that one?
I am going to be in a show through Bravo that the editors fell in love with my story. And the story is based on divorced women who basically, I like to call it, survived and thrived. They went beyond. And the executive producer of Bravo had come to Delray Beach and seen women between the ages of 40 and 50 who were beautiful. She claims that they're more beautiful than the woman in LA. Sorry.
And when is this show going to air?
I don't know for sure on the dates, on when it's coming. All that's in the works. We do have an amazing...
Is there a title
Captain
for it
Lee.
yet?
You know Captain Lee? He's one of the producers on the
Oh,
show.
okay. Great. Got a little hair story going
Yeah.
on there.
Captain Lee.
Captain Lee, okay. Do you know the title of this show?
It's going to be Delray Divorcees.
Okay. Good,
And
good.
it's basically going to be about 7 women who got divorces and thrived. And the reason why I decided, I was not a reality TV show person. My family and friends were like, what are you doing? Why are you going forward with this?
Well, now you're taking the bull by the horns, and you are going to be a reality TV star, and
I
you're
just
also going to
want
be a
to
podcast star. So I want to take a toast to
Use
you,
my
Elaine.
story to help people.
Use your story to help people, but I'm also telling you, you got to face your fears. You got to conquer yourself and get out there. Gotham Investigations, this story of survival can be you. Get out of your relationship if you see there is no
Signs.
end, and there's signs of traumatization.
Follow your gut.
Follow your gut. Follow your gut. And I'm not a white whiner,
Aw.
but
And cheers to your book. I look forward to reading it on vacation.
absolutely. Don't get scared now. It's about a husband that killed his wife. Cheers.
I saved that.
We'll see you at Gotham.